today?
Position groups. LSU baseball is 4 days away. Today's Monday. Doesn't count. Over with almost.
National holiday.
Yeah, national holiday. So you got Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday on the fourth day, big game, opening day of the season. Weather's going to be not as brutal as it normally is for opening day, especially because of the 2 o'clock game. And so leading up to that, to get everybody hyped up, we've talked a lot about baseball recently. We're going to talk a lot more about baseball. Our show's going to be consumed with baseball pretty much for the rest of the season, the rest of the year.
Seam heads.
Yeah, sure. We can be that if that's what you want. You can be that. That's
Okay.
you. That's just you. But
Gotta go get my helmet
LSU's
airbrushed.
poised and staffed to have another deep run to the postseason. Right? I think that they are one of the favorites to win the World Series. It's hard to win it twice. Hard to win it back-to-back years. It's going to be a different-looking team, but it's going to be a very talented team. And I think the biggest part of that is we've talked about that a lot is the depth of pitching staff. We've talked about who the starters are going to be, what's the rotation going to be, what's the starting lineup going to be. We talked about how deep the bullpen is, but I really want to go into how deep I really think the bullpen is. Okay? You have your 3 starters that you imagine are going to start. Thatcher Hurd, Luke Holman, and Gage Jump, right? Holman and Jump are 2 transfers. Obviously, Jump did not throw last year. He was coming off of Tommy John. So still to see kind of what's going on with that. I've heard good reviews about him. But, you have guys to fill in if he doesn't start. Holman's a preseason All-American. Thatcher Hurd's a preseason All-American. Those 2 guys are going to be your 1 and 2, 1A, 1B starters. When you get past that, and I think you saw last year how important the bullpen is, right? You have to have the depth. You have to have the guys that you trust to throw in there to be able to throw strikes. And LSU went through their period last year in the season that wasn't great. A lot of it was because they weren't able to get guys out, and they weren't able to finish guys off, and they were giving up more runs than they had normally had done throughout the course of the year, and part of that was the bullpen. And so, the bullpen's a very major key to.
Is it fair to say maybe just previewing it, probably the most improved part of the baseball team? Or the most potential?
I think the most potential. I think the most depth.
I think it's the deepest part of it.
Yeah. I think last year, had everybody stayed healthy, you'd be like, damn, that was the best bullpen I've ever seen in college baseball, right? You had so many guys that were able to do a bunch of different things through really hard. Now, a lot of those guys got hurt. This year, you're going to have a lot of those guys that have the ability to throw really hard and get outs, but you're going to have a better mix of lefties and righties. You're going to have a better mix of guys some experienced veterans, and some super, super talented freshmen that probably have no business being in college, right? And so I want to go down a few of the names that you're going to see a lot of. Griffin Herring is one. Now, I think he's a wild card because I think that if something happens to Gage Jump or he doesn't really – I think you could see Griffin –
anywhere in the rotation.
Be in the rotation. I think he's the first guy that they're going to throw in the rotation because – they like to have at least one lefty in the rotation. They didn't have a lefty starter last year in the rotation. Now you do. So he will be out the pen. He'll be kind of a swing guy. He'll come in some big moments. But if there's a spot in the rotation, I think you could see him sneaking in. Nate Ackenhausen.
I would say the same thing about Nate Ackenhausen, just from
same
what you
role.
saw.
But I think he's going to be more high leverage. He's going to be like, you're going to get me out of some situations. You may be first or second lefty out of the bullpen. Come in there and kind of give us extended innings. He was a big reason why they won the national championship last year. And, with the 6 innings of, when he had to start the game in the World Series. So you have him. And then
I think you'll see Nate in that Riley Cooper role. It feels like that's exactly like they're kind of cut from the same. I know they were roommates and I know they look similar, but they also play similar where they're like unfazed to a point where it's just like ball.
Then you have another guy coming out the bullpen. This is the guy we've talked about, the guy you're excited to see a lot of. Number one recruit coming in LSU, right? Yeah. Cam Johnson. Talk a little bit about him.
So, he's one of the ones. So I have 3, my personal, I guess 3. 3 from the left-handed side because there is so many left-handed arms on this team. So I think about, first off, there's names like a mentioned Griffin. There's names like who else we got on this thing? We also have somebody like a Javen Coleman. There's guys that I want to see what step they make forward this year, because obviously there's a step that needs to be taken forward. But for me, there's 3 left-handed pitchers that I expect to start the year out of the pen. But I want to see what kind of impact they have, because they're all newcomers that we have not seen throw in purple and gold yet. But we're talking about Lure, we're talking about Anderson, and we're talking about Cam Johnson. Obviously, the one you just mentioned is the biggest one, right? Those 3, I want to see what kind of impact they have and what kind of role, what kind of spot they can dig out for themselves, and where you can expect to see them as the season kind of goes.
And we've heard a lot about Lure from the guys on the team, from coaches on the team.
For some reason, he's kind of the one that's gone under the media radar, if you will. But the guys on the team it is nothing but plus.
First 3 guys they mentioned out of the bullpen or out of the pitching, the guys that they're excited to see is Justin Lure. Like Tommy White mentioned it. Beloso. He probably talked about it too. But Milazzo and Travinsky both talked about it last week when they were on the show. He's not going to have the most electric fastball, but last year he had a 1.89 ERA and 57 innings, and he dominated.
But the delivery's deceptive. Apparently he is very, very demanding up there.
Yeah, right. And he's going to control it. He's going to sink it. He's going to pitch you to death. And those guys, we've seen, those guys give LSU issues. Those guys give a lot of teams issues if you know how to pitch and you know what to do, and you get these guys to kind of expand the zone. It seems like he's doing that plus some here, and I think that's a guy that everybody should be excited about. His role could expand as the season goes.
You say expand, I really think too. Like, if that guy is as good with command and as good as being able to get ahead in counts as you think, don't be surprised if you start seeing him towards the back end of games. Nothing against Gavin. I think Gavin has got the obvious first shot. That's not even a question. But jumping to year 2, we'll see what happens, right? And I'm not even saying like I don't believe in him. I've just seen, if I go to the thought of like, hey, if you have that many guys, if you have that many dudes that are available and can do it, one would assume that a coach would say, hey, I'm going to find ways to end games as easy as I can. So if that means I don't have to throw Gavin 2-3 times in a row, don't be surprised if you see that name start to sneak in the back into some games too. That's all I'm saying.
Nope, I'm with you 100%, right? And you talked about Cam Johnson being a freshman. I think the biggest
That's what I was going to ask.
question mark
is where?
With freshman pitching, it's not necessarily where, it's how consistent are they going to be filling up the zone? How many strikes are you going to throw? Because here's the deal. When you're in high school and you're playing against high school competition, you throw 97, 98 miles an hour, and you're that elite, you're going to get wild swings at pitches that may not be
near the zone.
Perfect. Yeah. Right? Like they're just trying to hit. They're trying to survive.
They're out before they got in the box.
No doubt, right? And so you get some guys that may get in some bad habits if they don't hone it in or they don't play in these big competitions, which he did, but you come to college, it's a whole different thing. Better strike zone discipline, more talented hitters you're going to face day in and day out, more pressure, more people in the stands. So that's the biggest question mark. How quickly can these freshmen adjust and throw strikes and be ahead of the zone and be able to use their stuff? How quickly can they do that? And so I think that's the biggest question mark with Cam Johnson. If he can do that, he's back into the bullpen starter type guy all day, right? I don't think they're going to start him early in the year. Maybe he shows that he can do it maybe later on, but back into the bullpen type guy for sure.
Obviously talented, right?
Very talented.
Because of everything that came in with him, and you didn't expect him to even be at LSU. Like, he was obviously, it felt like he was going to be a first-round draft pick. With that said, where do you see him? Like, how would you kind of bring him along? Like, do you throw him right in the fire, or do you?
I'd put him in the bullpen, throw him an inning, and I'd ease him that way.
And not high leverage situations.
I'd like to see him whether it's high leverage or not. I'd like to see him be one of those guys that's like first out of the pen when starters being pulled. So whether that means he went 5 1/3 and you're bringing him in with a runner on second, whatever. But I think he's one of those guys where you kind of want to see. I want to put him in some good situations, but also situations where the game isn't completely lost, because I don't know the kid at all. I don't know his mental or any of that, but you don't want to lose him mentally.
Right, that's what I would, yeah.
But that doesn't mean that we can't put him in high leverage situations. You get what I'm saying? Like high leverage situations, being up 3-1 with a run on second and third and him coming in, that's still high leverage.
Right.
We just got time at the end of the game to actually get it back. You get what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So I'm not shying away from the high leverage situation, but I also want him to be very confident in what he goes out there and does, because I do think one huge thing is going to be with him is not so much – especially early on, not so much if he can land and throw that off speed, his second pitch for strikes, is can he get swings and misses with it?
Yeah.
Right? Because I think if he gets swings and misses with it earlier, that's going to turn into him being able to land it in the zone later on, which is, I think, is when you see him. If he's able to do those two things,
you want to see him go from a question mark to an exclamation point.
If he's able to
when
do,
he comes in, you're like, oh shit.
With that size, with that fastball, if he's able to do those two things, I wouldn't be surprised in any capacity that he's actually thrown out there to pitch in, because now you're looking at an absolute dude.
Right. 100%, right? And so that was one. And the other one you mentioned, another freshman, is Kay Anderson from Louisiana, left-handed pitcher.
Hasn't been talked about at all.
I mean, some of the coaches and stuff, but like, he's a freshman, right? So,
yeah.
like, he's going to have to come along, same type of thing. He can touch 94 from the left side. You know, I'd imagine with the way he's worked out and how he's trained, his velo may tick up. Now, he's coming off of Tommy John, didn't pitch at all his senior year in high school, but he's 100% healthy. And so I think that's another guy that you could see have a big role. They're very high on him. They're going to probably ease him along. But I think the common theme in this conversation is you have a lot of left-handed pitchers, right? And which is great, but you got to mix that with some dominant right-handed pitchers. All we've talked about right now has been left-handed pitchers. We have not mentioned a right-handed pitcher right yet. We're about to. You have Gavin Guidry back.
Yep.
He's going to be your closer. He's going to be your –
He is your ace in the hole.
Yeah. So either that's going to be in the ninth in a tight game, or they're going to put him in the most dangerous situation. Hey, you're going to end the inning, momentum killer, that type guy, which is what Major League Baseball does now with their best bullpen guys. Some guys they'll have their closer, but then they also have their, hey, get me out of trouble guy, no matter where that is. And that seems like it's going to be him. I think he's going to be the closer, but as the season unfolds, as some other guys, you may see him
because you have so many options.
That's another reason why I brought up Lore at the back end of games, is because of how you could possibly be seeing them use Gavin, right? Like he may come in with he may come in the game with 2 outs in the 6th, right? And now he goes for 2 in the 3rd. Well, who's finishing the game?
Right.
Maybe we don't want to extend him that far. Maybe we do want to bring him back on Sunday. We can't have him. He can't throw 50 pitches and come back on the next day, right? So I do think like their ability to use him in there and basically be a stopper and or a closer and or however it works out with them too, you never know. Like I could see that other guy getting some, but I expect because of his bulldog mentality, because of his demeanor on the mound and how he goes after everything. Hey, same guy's there, man. And it'd be crazy to see if he also – and it's so funny, too, that we're sitting here talking about it. When I sit here and I watch a 93, 94-mile-an-hour fastball, it's like, hey, could you imagine if he had 1 or 2 more miles an hour on that thing? But that's what baseball is today.
Well, and that's been the biggest thing he's worked on, right?
Yeah.
With Yeski coming in, he's worked on trying to increase his velo. And I think with him being –
because he's always got the fucking hammer.
Right.
Yep.
Always. He'll let you know it, and which is great. That's his pitch. That's
and he
his
can throw it
pitch.
in any count.
Any count, right? But you saw a little bit in Omaha. You saw a little bit towards the end of the year. I mean, he wasn't prepared to pitch like he did last year, right? He was as an infielder. He wasn't pitching at all in the fall, and so you could see it like, okay, hey, we're gonna like sit on the breaking ball, or we're gonna do some other things and make you
work.
Yes. And now with him knowing, hey, you are primarily going to be the pitcher right now. You're going to be a pitcher. You're still going to hit and do those things, but we're going to build you up. We're going to save the arm. We're going to work on the arm. We're going to develop the arm. We're going to make it bigger. I think that you're going to see a little bit of an uptick in velo anyway from him. And I think that guy is going to be a stud this year, right? So that's one righty. We've talked about Aiden Moffitt. Now he's going to be very dependent upon if he's going to be able to throw strikes.
He's your wild card, yeah.
He's the wild card. If he
you
can throw strikes,
if he can throw strikes consistently.
right? But if he can't, you can't throw him in there in these high leverage situations. But he's a guy that he throws 100-mile-an-hour sinkers. Now he's got to be able to throw strikes.
No, you heard it. 100
100-mile-an-hour mile-an-hour sinkers. Aiden Moffitt. Yeah, exactly. He redshirted, or he didn't redshirt, but he barely pitched last year, and his ball moves this much. And it's at 99 miles an hour. Yeah, but problem is the strike zone's it comes in and out every now and then, right? And so if he can find it, you're going to see him throw a lot. And it's going to be explosive, and it's going to be electric, and guys are not going to like facing him. That's just not fun. But he's a wild card. You have transfer from Alabama, Cade Woods, right? He's got experience. I think you're going to see a lot of him. I think that was a big get for the bullpen. He's going to be a righty out the bullpen. I mean, he's got some electric stuff. You know, he struck out. He threw 29 and a third innings for Alabama last year and struck out 30.9% of the batters he faced.
And they were trying to lose.
Yeah,
he didn't know it.
Yeah, and he didn't know they were trying to lose, but they were trying to lose. And then the last righty, there's more on the roster, but we don't have time to go through everybody. The last righty, I think that people are going to be very excited to see. People probably don't remember his name. He didn't pitch. He wasn't relevant at all last year because
don't bury the guy.
We got hurt in his fall. He had Tommy John in the fall as a freshman. Jaden Newt. He was the number one right-handed pitcher out of California. California is known for having some pretty good baseball players, pretty good baseball state. He was the number one right-handed pitcher coming out of high school out of California, comes to LSU, gets hurt, has Tommy John, doesn't pitch, but he's going to be a guy that, you know, Jay's mentioned him 2 or 3 times on our show talking about the bullpen. He always drops his name, and I think that's a guy that you're going to see him once he's 100% healthy. They're going to try to ease him back. Once he's healthy, I think you're going to see him make a lot of big moves in the rotation.
He's one. When they came in last year, it was wait until you see Jaden Newt, wait until you see Chase Shores.
Yeah.
You obviously got a good chance to see Chase Shores because he threw a good bit before he got hurt. Jaden got hurt much before that conversation even really kicked up. He's another one, straight up wild card right now because we don't know. We're not inside the program, right? We don't know. If he stays healthy and is able to get back to that level where he was, watch out.
And here's the deal. We're talking about these guys, and these are the guys that some of you heard of. Oh, look at you.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, this is him in high school. But, clean mechanics, very easy. Mm-hmm. You know, he's not trying – look, and this is him throwing before an inning. He's not trying to let it eat here, right? That's 92.
I'll tell you what.
This guy 92, has no chance. Run?
That's 92 in high school. That's easy with some movement. I mean, 72. Was that 72?
Yeah, it's a little breaker, a little bunt. But that fastball's got run.
It's got some run. I mean, look at it move. He's got
late life
slider.
Too. Yeah.
You know, now this is high school. This is not obviously college, but his rotation, his mechanics look really good. When he's missing, he's not missing by a ton. And this is, that's
late.
filthy.
That's
filthy, dude. That's so hard to hit. I feel
like that gun's a little down too.
Yeah. Ugh. I mean, look at that. The guy has no chance. 0. And this is in high school. I'd imagine he's even better now.
They talked about him like that for a reason last year.
I mean, he went through a whole year. That was 93. He went through a whole year of rehab. What happens sometimes? That was not 100.
No, the gun's getting.
No, that was 106. That's why.
Yeah.
What happens after you come off of Tommy John sometimes? Some guys come on throwing harder.
These days, yeah.
So I'm excited about him, though. These guys we've talked about. These are some of the new faces.
Rogan Blausen.
We didn't even talk about the guys that already have coming back.
Yeah.
The veteran guys that have thrown, maybe haven't made a ton of noise on the mound, but have ability to make noise, right? You have Bronzini. He's another lefty. He threw a little bit last year towards the end of the year. You have Sammy Dutton, who you have all these guys who are going to be able to go out there and throw strikes, and they're going to continue to develop and get better and get better. And you never know which one of those guys are going to make a step forward, right? Micah Bucknam, he's been here. This will be his second year. He had some time last year. Chase Short is going to come back, obviously off injury, hopefully at the end of the year, and maybe throw a couple innings. DJ Primo, Jay was pretty high on him. He talked about how he made a bunch of adjustments. He got redshirted last year. Will Helmers. That's another guy. He's been here. He's a senior.
Yep.
He's a big dude. He's a lot bigger than I thought he was. He's a great dude to have on the team. He's been around. I think he's got some stuff behind him, and I think he's going to be able. You're going to see him pitch some meaningful innings. Like, you have a lot of guys. You have Christian Little still on the team. I was about to say,
we're on the list.
And so, like, we talked about a big group of guys that are new that you can see, and we didn't even talk about the guys that are already here. So,
and we didn't talk about all of the incoming guys. Like, there's still some names on here we haven't seen throw yet who came in with big names. We just want to see, like, if they're going to translate and play well here.
Yep.
Like,
no doubt.
The list isn't stopped yet. That's why it's got the makings to be one of the best pitching staffs you've ever seen. Now it's just, can you go out there and do it?
Now, I want to make a talk about, like, we already seen those guys. They're not good. They can't pitch here. They're not good enough. Well, let's not be so sure in that, right? There was a guy by the name of Lewis Coleman that threw here. Pitched as a freshman in the rotation. Didn't pitch great. Wasn't terrible. But kind of got hit around a little bit. Next year, not great, Bob. Like, didn't pitch really well.
Maybe leave
to
the
the
team.
point where they try to make him a submarine guy. To the point where, hey, you're going to be buried on the bench. You're not going to throw at all. To the point where Coach Maneri said, you may
go left hand low.
You may need to look into transferring.
Oh.
He says, I don't want to do that. This is where I want to be. I'm going to fix my stuff off the field as far as going to school and make sure my grades are better. But I'm also going to do what I need to do to pitch here. He went from submarine back up to the top, trying to figure out where his arm slot. All of a sudden, he finds the arm slot.
You mean all of a sudden he found the on-deck hit circle?
He found, hey, I'm going to step this way. I'm going to throw this way. I'm going to throw across my body, and I'm going to throw 93, 94 miles an hour. And you're going to think, the righty's going to think I'm throwing from behind him. And then I'm going to throw this big slider where you're not going to like that either.
It's going to start in the dugout, and you have to try to hit it. Yeah.
You're not going to love that. And so he figured it out. All of a sudden, he had to earn coach's trust back. He throws his junior year, mop-up duty. Hey, you're going to throw. We're up 10, down 10, whatever. You're going to throw. A couple innings here. Okay. Well, man, he went in one inning, struck out 2, no runs. All right. Okay, we're going to give you a couple more of those. Oh, he's throwing well. Okay, maybe we're going to give you a little bit better. Guy gets knocked out early. Not necessarily a blowout, but we're going to see what you can do. Okay, now he's throwing really well. Now he ends up becoming the closer. They go to Omaha in 08. He is 7-0 with like a 1-something ERA going into Omaha. And ends up giving up a home run, but threw lights out to the point where the year before, coach was trying to say you need to transfer. After his junior year, coach is trying to recruit him back to LSU for his senior year to not go to the draft. Comes back as a senior, becomes SEC Pitcher of the Year, starting on a Friday, wins their national championship on the mound, gets to the Major League Baseball, pitches 7 years in the big leagues. My point in saying all of that is just because a guy is here for a few years and you kind of get stale and you don't see him have the success that you would hope that you have early on in his career, sometimes those guys develop later and sometimes they figure something out and it clicks and they take off.
Don't write them off.
Don't write them off is my point. That's my point. That's why I think the depth of the pitching staff is so good because you have the ability to have guys like that you're going to look up. I mean, last year, right? Like every year there's somebody you look up and like, damn, I wasn't expecting him to have that. You weren't expecting Gavin Guidry to do what he did last year. You weren't expecting Nate Ackenhausen to throw 6 innings in the World Series and win you the World Series.
I mean, I tell the story all the time of whenever we were in Omaha the first time at the bachelor party after LSU had lost the second game to Wake Forest. Like, they lost the first one, obviously, of the tournament, and they're walking back. He's like, LSU just doesn't have enough pitching. They're not going to be like – it's the first time doubt had actually creeped in on some of these balls that we're watching LSU. I was like, they still get to play. And then you get a nasty Nate.
Right.
Like, somebody can deal from the have to every now and again. You're like, you're salty enough to get through it. But now LSU it feels like you got dudes everywhere.
No doubt.
If it like on paper for sure.
No doubt.
And somebody in the chat was asking because let me pull up the exact question, but because of like the depth that you have, do you think that you have? It's from Kirk Landreneau, who's the golfer. Shorter leash this year with the depth of the staff. Like, do you think there'll be kind of a shorter leash for pitchers that come in relief or are starters because of how many guys you do have, seemingly?
I don't think so. I think it's going to be the leash is going to be as long as Jay feels like it needs to be for these guys. Like,
because if somebody gets taken out, it doesn't necessarily mean a shorter leash. It's matchup based almost.
Sometimes it's matchup based. Sometimes he sees it and he's like, okay, he's not. He's kind of lost the feel of his fastball, or he's not around the zone as much.
You also get sometimes a longer leash when you realize, and coaches will give something longer when there's not that many guys that are trusted too.
Right.
So like if I got a ton of guys that I trust that I know will go out there and get strikes, you can start playing matchups, or you can start playing hey, this may not be your best day. Let's go ahead and get to the next guy.
But there's not going to be a purposely scheduled, hey, you're going to throw 5 innings after, like, it's not going to be the analytics of Major League Baseball, at least I don't believe.
Or Wake Forest.
Where they say, hey, you're not going to face the lineup 3 times, right? Like, I don't think that's going to happen with the depth. But what I think it's going to happen is you're going to have more confidence going into some of these guys earlier than you would have maybe in years past.
Might be in for some long baseball games.
Potentially. Hopefully the starters are dominant and you don't have to worry about that. And the starters go 6-7 innings and it's normal. Hopefully you're not taking guys out in the 5th or in the 6th inning, throwing 5 innings, and then you throw a guy in for 2 or 3 guys, and then, having 17 pitching changes.
That's really what it's going to come down to is you may see long baseball games if you don't get production out of the guys that are starting. It's really that simple. If you got guys that are going to go out there and get you out to start and do well, they're going to get you deep enough into games where we don't have to throw 5-6 guys out of the pen a night or whatever,
No doubt.
So that's going to be really the key of it. Even it doesn't matter how good the pen is. If we can't find what we need up front, there's a very good chance that as deep as they seem like they are in the pen, you're going to run into we're not deep. We don't have enough arms, right? Because that's what it usually always turns out